was the term that he, or the phrase he used, because I asked him to repeat it, and I didn't write it down, but I thought that's kind of the way he left it. I thought it was a little strong, but I got the message that Carroll wants to keep the corridor preservation going. So.
Well, I mean, Dakin, what else do you have in regards to corridor preservation or anything in the 5-year program regarding any 4-lane activity in Western Iowa?
As far as with 30?
Yes.
Nothing.
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 So really, the one thing that we do have, you're going to wipe it off the books.
It's not
So
in
I can see where Jim's statement would be correct.
I would say that I think you have to preserve that corridor. I mean, you've set it aside this long, we can't abandon it now. Here you had all this work done in the past, and we're just waiting for appropriate funding to be available, and unfortunately, you have a congressman over there that hasn't been very willing to throw some money at you.
Careful what you say, we have a reporter here.
Oh, well, don't say that. Oh, this is when we're kicking you out.
I think I've written enough negative things about Congressman King in the last month. I don't need to write anything else.
The one thing about, and by inheriting this, I have not gone back and really reviewed all the work that was done in '92 and '93. So I'm not even clear what, if what was laid out would still meet today's geometric standards, engineering standards. So that's something that I'm sure if we do a renewal, that'll have to be done within the next 3 years, or at least a moderate review of it. And the environmental work, that would have to probably be redone anyway. But I honestly, I was okay with dropping it. I'm okay with renewing it. It's something that's going to be a decision made above my head anyway. But I just wanted to gather some information from the group, and specifically from Carroll.
There are a lot of people in Carroll that would applaud the decision to drop the bypass, even the thought of it. Because most of the people, the merchants, I believe, think that it would kill a retail business by bypassing the city. I don't know.
I've heard that. I've heard that comment, and so yesterday when Jim called, we spoke for a little while. I wasn't ready for that exactly, but that's.
Does the bypass help or hinder possibly a 4-lane between Carroll and Toledo?
I'm not sure that it does either.
I don't see a relationship between.
Well, I mean, the relationship, I guess, would strictly be a connection to it.
I think your predecessor argued at one time it would help if we would agree to bypass to the north to 71 and solidify from Glidden to Carroll if we would agree to the north bypass. And if we're saying we're treating the two independent of each other.
That's a good question. I don't know that there's that type of relationship between the two. Yeah. Frankly, right now, when you look at the approach that the commission is, and in the last, and I say this with some confidence, that their programs have been based on preservation. That's been their #1 priority. Preservation, interstate, and bridges has been kind of where they put the money. I'm not sure that the bypass necessarily fits into that preservation. I mean, that would be considered expansion. And in the past, that's been considered additional funds beyond those priorities. I don't remember the numbers they used to use. It was like 90 million for preservation.
Changes from
yeah, so I think 35 for bridges or something like that. But so I doubt that there's really a this or that relationship with those two projects.
There would be if you built the Carroll to Glidden section first and then came in later and did did the bypass, there would be a certain amount of throwaway, which we'd like to avoid, but I don't think it would be a great amount of throwaway, because the 5-lane section ends at County Road N33 right now, which is a mile, basically a mile from where the bypass would start.
Of course, right now you have the bypass area established.
Yeah.
And if you look at what the requirement on your part to renew it versus if, say, 3 or 4 years down the line, you decide that, yeah, we want to go to the bypass again, you'd have to go back and it'd be a considerably more difficult process to reestablish it 3, 4, 5 years down the road, monetarily, time-wise, and also take into effect that possibly some things could be built on that section, which you would then have to acquire or do. So the simplest thing, especially in your position where you're just getting your feet wet with this, would be to reestablish it for 3 years, and that gives you time to really adequately analyze the situation and make a more informed decision.
Oh, I don't disagree with that. I'll tell you, I don't always take the easiest route, but sometimes it works out. One of the things that I also wanted to point out, with corridor preservation, we have, I mentioned the 10 days to purchase, that we can also decline a purchase. I mean, we don't. So, and if that's the case, and then they build in there, and it's basically we deal with it with the project. But yeah, and one of the things that I've had a question about, and this is strictly to the Carroll folks, is does the fact that a bypass is laid out, does that hurt as far as when you've got developers looking? I know you've got a lot of growth to the north and then probably growth to the south towards Swan Lake area, but
I don't think it's affected a single development.
Okay.
I just think it's been a route that's been there for 20 years.
17 years.
That's just been sort of assumed that
I think
that because the DOT is pretty slow-footed, that it's just going to be a line there on a map. That's a line there on a map.
yeah.
Would this impact Mount Vernon, Lisbon area?
I'm not, I'll be honest, I'm not familiar with the Mount Vernon, Lisbon
I know
area.
they've talked about initiating corridor preservation, but I don't know that they have.
They are.
They are going to?
They are
I know
doing
they've talked about it.
They've been holding the hearings, and we've had hearings and so forth. I think that's almost in place if it isn't in place.
Maybe.
I can talk to you after the meeting, Dakin, but what's the process? You said that that it's not your ultimate decision.
Well,
You're making a
basically
recommendation.
I'll go back today and I'll sit down with my boss for a little while, and we'll kind of go through what I've heard, and then we'll kind of discuss what our options are.
And then you present that to the commission?
No, it's just it's a staff action is what we call it.
So because you approved it 2001, 2004, 2007, is it simply the
It's just
the
a matter
staff
of the
change?
renewal. I think we have to, I have to do a staff action, get approval through management, which means my boss and his boss and ultimately the director. And then I think it's a letter of notification
to the local media, which would be you.
Yeah,
You probably, were you there 3 years ago?
probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Doug's been there for
We even play golf once in a while. But what? Okay.
So I mean, it's not something that, it's not a drawn out decision.
So you'll make a recommendation to your superior.
And-
How are you leaning right now? Because you're going to leave
Oh,
here
I
after
think
hearing this and go back and make a
I
recommendation.
think, is it Dot? I think
Yeah.
Dot pretty much summed it up. If we do it for 3 years.
So you'll recommend continuing the
I
preservation
think,
for 3
I
years?
think so. I think so.